Hi, and welcome to Complete and Cast, the official podcast for Complete and Box video games. I'm your host, Spencer, and today in episode 41, we're once again joined, you won't believe this.
Guess who?
Hi, Parker.
Guess who?
I'm floored. Like, this is unbelievable. So we're doing...
Unprecedented.
We're doing another game review.
Never before on this podcast has one person been the co-host guest for this many times.
It's true.
It's never happened before on this podcast.
We're setting, every time, we're setting a new world record.
It's going to be hard for the person that's going to break this record.
And we don't do speed runs on this podcast. We do long plays. Yeah. Because sometimes
we don't get on this speed plays.
Sometimes you have trouble going to sleep and you just want to hear two guys talk. And that's what you listen to us for, isn't it, really?
Yes.
Right. So today we're doing another game review. And this one's going to be another pretty interesting one because we're doing the Uncharted Nathan Drake Collection. Right. That is correct. We're doing all three Uncharteds in one go.
Yeah.
Now, each game will have an individual score. Sometimes during the different parts, we'll talk about all of, like, say, the gameplays together because they don't change too much. And in others, like the story, we're going to talk them all separate. Mm-hmm. So, I guess let's get into the meat of this. The big thing that we should know is I played Uncharted 1 through 3 when they first came out on PS3.
Right.
And then again, a couple years later, when the Nathan Drake Collection came out, getting ready for Uncharted 4. Now, Parker...
I played the first one when it came out. Like, I was there day one. I bought it, like, full price. And I remember...
I'm sorry.
I remember loving it, to be honest. I mean, we'll get into it. But I remember loving it a lot. We'll have to see what happens. I didn't play 2 or 3. And then I played all 3 just now. And we'll have to hear how my opinion changed on that first one as we go.
Let's actually just get into the nitty-gritty right now. We're going to start with Uncharted 1. At least as far as the story is concerned and everything. So
the story of Uncharted 1. You are Nathan Drake. You are the long descendant, many-generation descendant of Sir Francis Drake.
You know what? Before we even start here, let me ask you a question. Let me ask you a question.
/ explorer.
Because this is story-related, because characters are story.
Yeah.
What are your general thoughts on Nathan after playing the first 3 games?
Do
you like him?
Yeah, he's great.
Okay,
I think he's a great character, and I think, like, 100% it could have easily been movies instead. Like, he's different enough from Indiana Jones that it's fun. Like, Indiana Jones, he's definitely similar and is definitely based on that trope, for sure. You could tell it's like a conglomeration of, like, that kind of adventure hero.
He's like a sillier Indiana Jones.
But I think, like, I don't know, he works a bit differently, and I think I could easily see, like, him having his own movies. If whoever created the idea went the movie route, it would have been successful. Like, it would have been fine.
I'm glad you said that, because I would have been, like, despite what you think of the games, I would have been a little upset if you're like, nah, I just don't like him. He's just kind of annoying.
No,
like, he's a really
great.
good character.
Yeah, he's a good character, absolutely. And, like, the other characters are actually pretty good, too, as far as characters go. Like, individually, the characters, and even the first one as far as, like, the story I liked a lot. But, yeah, so the story, you have Nathan Drake, many generations from Sir Francis Drake, and he is, an Indiana Jones type explorer, adventurer kind of thing. He's on the hunt for, so Sir Francis Drake, supposedly faked his own death, and he knows about it because he has this ring that was passed down from generations, and he finds the coffin that was supposed to have his remains, and they don't, and it leaves them on this whole city for the search for, I think they're searching for, in the first one, I'm trying to remember if it's like, it's El Dorado.
Okay, yeah. Right.
Okay, so the first one's El Dorado, the lost city of gold, if you're familiar with, like, there's a bunch of movies that are centered around it, but the idea is that there's this city that was, like, made of gold, in, like, South America, I want to say, or some jungly type place.
I believe it's somewhere Central or South America.
Central South America, yeah. And so it's just like a myth, a folklore type thing of, like, people, like, on the hunt for it, and then it's going to be wealth and riches and blah blah blah. So they're heading out to go try to find this, and it's it's some pretty tenuous like story. Like, in order to have it be a little bit more than just like you're exploring, and it could just be like just exploring and dealing with traps and stuff, and I think it still probably would have been pretty fun. But like any game, they has to be like this bad guy, and so then they throw this like random other guy who wants all the riches for himself, and of course he's like got an army of dudes that just shoot at you nonstop.
Very incompetent dudes.
Yeah, and it's just whatever.
You gotta wonder what he's paying these dudes throughout all the games, throughout all 5 Uncharted at this point. Yeah. You gotta understand what these mercenaries are being paid, because they're pretty bad.
Yeah, for sure. So it goes on for a while, and then you're getting closer and closer, and then when you are getting to the city, then all of a sudden there's like all these like references to something that's like killing all the men off camera, and you're like, what? And then like sure enough, you're like in like some deep dark cave, and all of a sudden there's these like mutant creatures that like it's not so much that it's not supposed to be completely supernatural. I mean, it is, but it's supposed to be that like there was a I want to say like some sort of curse or something, and the people that like I think they presented it where like it's something that has to do with something with this idol. It turns people into these like zombie things or whatever.
Right.
I don't know. They in the later ones they try to like base it in reality, where it's like, oh, there's like some sort of like thing, like some sort of chemical or something, whatever. Well, this one, it's pretty much just a curse.
I will say that this is the big talking point you got to talk about when you're talking about the story of the first one.
Right.
Where it really is the point where you probably like not lose interest, but kind of just drop the story.
Yeah.
Because it's like, I would totally, if they started out the very beginning and were like, this is a world where the impossible is possible. It's not crazy. Up's not down, down's not up, but like things like this are like whatever.
Right.
But
it's very similar to Indiana Jones. Like in Indiana Jones, like Raiders of the Lost Ark, it's like there's weird stuff happening, and at the very end, clearly there's something pretty supernatural that happens. But like nothing happens where you're just like you roll your eyes.
That's
like,
the roll your eyes
until the
moment.
end.
Yeah.
But with the way they play it in Raiders, like it works, and they could have probably played this in a way where it works, but it definitely like because of the nature of and like we'll get into it with the gameplay on this one, or I forget at what point we'll talk about it, but like the first one, it could have worked, but because it's a video game and because you are like the nature of this specific video game is repeatedly getting into these combats, you just immediately start hating it, and like the story suffers because of it, because you're annoyed at everything else that's going on, and so you just lose interest in the story for sure. But yeah, it's definitely like whatever, and then you end up keeping them from removing, like basically they're gonna take this idol off the island, and if they do, it could theoretically spread this zombie curse to the whole world. Fortunately, you save the day and you like send it back to like the depths of the ocean or something, so no one will ever find it until they do later, I'm sure. I mean, I don't know, but yeah, so it's definitely like you get rid of it back into the like somewhere where it probably won't get dug up again, but pretty standard as far as stories go. The only thing that I will say that was like kind of like they tried a little bit, but it did fail as well, is you have this best friend Sullivan, this
Do
older
you
guy.
like Sullivan?
Yeah, Sullivan's
okay, cool.
Good too.
I like Sully as a
unfortunate
character.
problem is that in the first one they tried to present it. And basically, this is also like looking back from having played all three. When the first one came out, they probably didn't know that they were necessarily going to make a sequel. So some of the stuff that happens in it is fine in a self-contained story where you never have any other stories. But, like, as we go late in the later stories, we find out, like, the backstory of Nathan and Sully, and, like, they definitely... It makes the first one even more ridiculous, because, like, once you realize that they have been literally friends forever, in the first one, they definitely present it as, like, Sullivan is, like, an acquaintance friend who, like, gets up to, like, who likes to make money with Nathan by going and pillaging and collecting treasure and stuff. But, like, it definitely, like, the way they present it is that, like, is Sullivan on our side? We don't know. Like,
right.
You're always supposed to wonder.
But then, by the
end, you realize
like,
that you realize they've been like for their whole lives, and
right.
and that Sullivan is like basically this like estranged father figure for Nathan for his whole life. And so if you go back to try to replay the first one, especially after that knowledge, it's like super annoying that Nathan even questions Sully at any point in the story. And mostly he doesn't, but a couple of times he's like, "Hey, what's going on, Sully?" You know, and it's just like, screw that. Like, that's not you can't really do that.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Like, they could have, they needed a, whatever. But even as a self-contained story, though, the Sullivan maybe is a traitor, but then he's not. It's very loose. Like, it's like, he's just, like, still around, and he, you know, whatever. So it's just, it doesn't quite work, even as a self-contained story where you're like, is he a good guy? Is he a bad guy? And then at the end you find out he's a good guy, and he's on your team. You're like, okay, cool. Like, even as a self-contained story, it kind of fails, but then as a part of a greater whole, it's just awful. Like, it's just really...
And
like a weird note.
All throughout, of course, what game is complete without a little bit of a love interest,
right.
love story kind of thing?
Alina is there, and she's, you know, was with you on her own thing. She was making a TV show, and then she's, you know, she gets bustled in with you on this adventure, and you go through the whole thing together. And of course, it's all, you know, like laid on pretty thick, you know, where it's like at first it's like, oh my gosh, you make me so mad! And then it's like, oh, I actually am super in love with you. And it's like, pretty much like every
We've been
trope.
through so much.
Yeah.
So
it's definitely, but I don't think, like, that part of it I think works. Like, the characters are well written, and the dialogue's pretty well written. That, like, most of that stuff kind of works. Like, the interactions, at least, like, you can tell that they are aware that these tropes exist, and that they are, like, doing good versions of them. They're not like oblivious to it, like as if they think they're coming up with a completely original story. Like, this is definitely like they set out to make a story that has been told time and again and just tell it well. It falls apart in a couple of moments because of the gameplay.
Yeah.
And because of a few things, but overall I think it's a generally okay story. As far as standard adventure stories go.
So here's my take on, we're going to finish up Uncharted 1 story. I agree with you that it's pretty good throughout the whole thing, but the one thing that I'll never forget, like, it's just one of those moments you'll never forget, is when those dumb zombie things come up. So whereas I would think it would be like, honestly, now, 7 or 7.5.
Right, and now, like, there was a moment where I remember in the first one that I actually was like, oh, this could take a turn, because when you first discover the zombies, it's like, ugh. But then there's, like, these, like, you find out that, like, the, like Nazis, basically, like, but, like, they don't say Nazis because I don't want to be exactly Indiana Jones, but it's, like, definitely this Germany type Marines from that era. They were seeking this treasure as well. And so at one point you're, like, on a German U-boat, and you're also, like, in this facility that's very, like, World War II run, but it's from World War II, but it's run down. The rest of the game you were in, like, ruins. And so I thought there was going to be something where, like, the Germans created something, like a serum or a virus or something. And that, even though that would have been, like, not fun, like, Tomb Raider, Indiana Jones adventure type style, it still would have been cool because it would have been like, oh, because at one point you're fighting the zombies, you're in this like, it looks like more like World War II suddenly instead of like run down, instead of like ruins. But then it's revealed that it's like a curse, and like there's like weird like smoke, like almost like clock tower, like the aura that's around Bates or whatever his name is. What's his name?
From
like,
Clock Tower 2.
Like it's just like that weird like aura type thing is surrounding the idol, and you realize that they're like saying it's cursed, and then it was like a biggest eye roll ever, and the zombies are just annoying, and it's just like, this sucks. Like, because up to that point you were like, what's gonna happen? Like, I'm really interested, but then it's just this weird zombie thing, and it's kind of dumb. So
yeah, like I said, I would have given it more than an average, but that part is super annoying.
Yeah.
I would tend to think lower than average, but I like the characters enough to
Right,
give it...
the characters are great. They're really well written.
I like the characters enough to give it a literal 5.
Yeah, I think I'm right there with you. I would give it like a 1 or 2 if it wasn't for the fact that the characters were like at least somewhat
and, I mean, like you said,
and
their interactions are great. They really are.
Like it's definitely like there's some cheesy one-liners here and there, but like in the same way that there's cheesy one-liners in like Indiana Jones that you like still quote to this day.
Yep.
Like on the surface, some of these one-liners are not really that great. Like by today's movie standards or whatever, or what, but like they're still fun. Like,
no,
it's
out
funny,
of context.
Out of context,
like,
it's like that's not
like,
funny.
I love you, I know is pretty dumb out of context, but like
within the story, it's amazing.
You're like, yep, like that's all you have to say. Like,
right,
and they have a lot of
so
that kind
well
of stuff
done.
in here.
Right, exactly.
All right, so heading over to Uncharted 2, we're gonna hit up the story for this. We're gonna go
Right.
through all 3 stories first.
Right.
So Uncharted 2 picks up. Here's the crazy part. After Uncharted 1.
You'll never guess.
I guess it could have been a prequel, but it is a sequel to it.
Right. So in Uncharted 2, they kind of mess around a lot more with timeline and stuff. It starts out that you're like in this you wake up and you're like bleeding, like you've been shot or
cool
something,
start.
and you're in like this like train that has just crashed. And like it just throws you right in.
How
and you're
cool is
like,
that scene, right?
Yeah, the train
Isn't it
part
cool?
is pretty amazing.
It's pretty cool.
And you're like trying to get out, and it's like the train's falling off a cliff, and you're climbing on the outside of it, and the inside of it.
It's like I forget where this takes place, but
it's
like
Nepal,
Nepal, right?
Yeah.
So like it's crazy snowy out, and like everything's these huge.
It's just crazy,
huge mountains and all that.
Yeah. Like you're in like basically like literally the Himalayas, so it's just like crazy, like whatever, and so you're like. And then you get a certain distance, and then it cuts back to like, you interacting with this, this like-minded adventurer, like sort of like shady individual. Like, they definitely are playing up Nathan's similar to like a Han Solo bounty. Like he's just like, I'm out for a buck, like I'm out to make some money. I'm out to go exploring, and it's fun, whatever. So like. It's like he he has associates that are similar, and they introduce this girl and this guy who they clearly have all this like history with, and they're like planning some sort of like thing, like some sort of like double cross on another guy who's like asking them to steal some stuff for them, and they're like, well, we got a double cross, and it's just like that kind of like, okay, let's do it. And then it cuts back to the train and cuts back and forth. And so it takes a while, but basically, like, back and forth, you're, like, trying to steal an item for this like, warlordy kind of scary dude, who at first they make it just sound like he's some sort of, like, rich guy that wants this artifact. But as time goes on, you realize this is, like, some scary dude. Like, he's, like some sort of crazy warlord who has all these plans for what he wants to do, and he's trying to get you to steal this dagger, which like you're wondering what this dagger's power is or whatever. Especially after having played the first one, you're like, what sort of powers are involved?
Right.
But it turns out the dagger is actually just a key that helps you go on this whole thing. And eventually the stories like slowly start to link up to where they go together. But there's some like crazy moments in between, like, you know, there's a couple, like, they introduce stealth in this one, and so there's some cool like stealth story parts where you're like sneaking in and like a like museum and like some, you know, other places, and then there's there's like this whole fight on a train and stuff, and it's just very exciting. But like it's you know, a cool story, and they finally link up to where you find out how you woke up on this train half dead, and it's like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. So, and then the story picks up from there. Like you know, slowly make your way, and you get like taken in by these like Tibetan type like village
mountain people.
Yeah, like it's definitely like Tibet, Nepal, like whatever. Like it's not very explicit. Like it's just kind of general. Like, oh, we're here in the Himalayas near Mount Everest, whatever. And so it's that like kind of Sherpa like people, you know, like that society like takes you in, and you slowly recover or whatever. And then of course it wouldn't be like they did bring back Alina from the first one, and you know, in the beginning you have this like relationship with this like this female character who's like
Chloe,
who's like the same kind of like she's like an explorer type, like you know, what like opportunists, like just trying to make money like in ways that aren't like legal, you know. So she's like the same kind of character, and you guys, like, it's clear that you guys are together, and you don't know where Alina is.
It's a surprise because you would think when starting out the second you would be just like with Alina, but they
they just make it sound like time has passed and maybe you guys separated and you whatever, and you eventually make it to this place where this warlord guy is like terrorizing everybody, and it turns out that Alina is also there as a journalist trying to like write a story about this warlord guy, and so like you kind of cross paths and get thrown back together, and it's like, they do a really good job of writing the awkward tension between all three in this, like, it's not really a love triangle because, like, you and Alina have gone your separate ways, but once you get to see each other again, there's definitely, like, that, man, like, why didn't it work out between us kind of thing, and like, Chloe also has her whole double-cross thing going on because she's, like, working with the warlord, but, like, also working with you, and so she keeps going back and forth, so it's like, you really don't know what's going, like, they do a good job of writing that kind of weird interactions there, or whatever. But yeah, you're trying also to get to this like lost city, very similar to the first one. This one, it definitely takes a turn, just like the last one, but I think they play it a little bit better. And also you're prepared for it because the first one, that the zombie thing happened.
To it. Yeah.
So you're prepared for this like moment where something crazy happens, and they play with that concept a little bit, where there's these like weird Yeti creatures that are chasing you for a lot of the time, and they're kind of scary. And then it turns out that they're just people wearing like a costume, but the people that are wearing the costume still end up being these like sort of superhuman-y type, like this race of people that like beings or whatever that guard this like lost city or whatever. And so it's definitely like a thing, like it's definitely like a, but they present it where there's the warlord is after this like resin that apparently turns you into that kind of superpowery thing. So they present it, at least they're like, there's this thing that somebody discovered a long time ago that turns you into like a super strong thing, turns your skin kind of a little bit purple bluish, and you are super strong and you live for like a long time because these like dudes that you fight when you get to this city are like dressed in pretty old type garb, like almost like like ancient type garb. Like it looks new, but it's like the style is like super and they don't speak a language that you've ever heard, and they have pretty high tech weaponry, like this crossbow that's super powerful and stuff. But yet they don't like clearly they don't have like the kind of technology you have. So it's like an advanced civilization that was cut off, like like an Atlantis kind of idea or something. And so and like this warlord apparently heard about this and is after this resin to make his army basically into like superhuman dudes, which makes a lot more like that's definitely more up my alley for an adventure story like this. Like it's like, okay, it doesn't have to be real, but you have to present it where it's like, okay, I get why this is not just like a curse, but just kind of random. Like this was like, okay, there's this thing, this is what it does. There's like an internal logic to it, and so I like that a lot.
And it's not just thrown at you at like in 1 second.
It's like brought up and over the course of the thing, and you're just like, oh, okay, cool, and you're kind of on board with it. The story's a lot longer than the first one. There's like a lot more that happens. Like you go to all these different locations, and so that like definitely like is a lot different, because like I kept expecting the game to be over, and then there was just like a whole nother part, and like it wasn't bad, but it was definitely like messed with my expectations, because the first one was pretty short when all was said and done, whereas this one was like pretty in depth. Like the story was like overarching, which like was a lot cooler, and I didn't expect that. But yeah, so it was and so then the end, the warlord, of course, you get to the city, and then you get most of the guys dead, and he of course takes this resin, drinks from this lake or whatever, and becomes like this kind of weird like super powered dude. And then of course you have to have this boss battle with him at the end, and then of course once you do that, the whole city starts crumbling.
Right.
like every other thing. And so then you have to run away, and everything's falling apart. And of course you meet back up with Alina and Chloe, and you're like, let's get out of here, and you like just make it out at the last minute. And then there's like a pretty they write it pretty well, where after all said and done, like you've clearly reconnected with Alina, because you spend pretty much the last half of the game like trying to escape or do stuff with her, not Chloe, because Chloe's with the warlord guy. But she's a double agent, so she does help you anytime you see her, but like she's not there with you experiencing all this stuff. So you reconnect with Alina, and you're like, ooh, what's gonna happen? And they do a good job of writing it where like Chloe like is like aware that clearly you are in love with this girl, and like even though you were separated and you've reconnected, like she's like, I get it, it's cool, I understand, and like I have my own life to leave, so I'm happy to just go live my life. And so she like basically leaves you to it at the, like there's a moment of interaction, and she like goes, and then it ends with you and Alina together again. And of course Sullivan in the one? I don't think he is.
I don't think he's in it much.
He's in a little bit, but
he
not
might be
much.
in like a little tiny bit, but it's nothing super crazy. Maybe he like picks you up at the end.
Yeah.
But it's not like based around him.
Yeah,
so.
I think he's there. Yeah, he's definitely there. And then you just meet up with him. And there's a couple other new characters you meet. You meet this like Tibetan guy that you don't speak each other's language, and he's pretty cool. Like you go around with him, and he's always just like, who's those? He's just always like saying stuff to you, and you're like, okay, I don't know. But you go on this adventure together, and then you meet this guy that is from like, he's also from like the German Nazi thing. Like they were tracking down this resin too, and this guy like realized what the resin was and what its potential was, and so he killed all of his men and then went into exile in this like Nepalese like town, like mountain town. And like so you come across him, and he's just like this dude that speaks English with an accent, and you're like, whoa, who's this guy? And like it turns out like because he's wearing the robes and everything, like he like is a native, but he's clearly not. And so you find out this whole backstory that he like was kind of like in exile after like all the stuff that went down with his people, with his like troop of men or whatever. So like you know, there's some cool characters you meet up with, and another great. I mean, story wise, much better,
much more going on.
Much more going on. The characters are all pretty good. The main bad guy is, you know, he's believably bad. Like he's kind of like that. They do a good job of writing him where he's just like kind of a megalomaniac. Like,
yeah,
I'm gonna kill everything.
He's like a cartoonish bad guy.
Yeah,
and it's,
definitely.
It's fine. I like.
You didn't care. I didn't care about him too much. Like I wasn't like interested in him as a bad guy. Like so they didn't do that good of a job because I didn't really care. But they did a good job that I wasn't like who is this guy? What is his like? I knew what his motivation was, and that's all you really needed. So it didn't matter anyways. But
so definitely a better story.
Yeah, for sure.
Very actually complicated when you think about it.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of stuff going on. I mean, I didn't even touch on some of the stuff, like some of the character interactions, but yeah, it's pretty involved for sure.
I'm thinking out of 10, probably looking at an 8 here. It's pretty good.
Yeah. I would say I would give it an 8.5. I liked it. The story was good. I mean, like, the thing that's weird about something like this, like, if I would have just played Uncharted 2 without playing Uncharted 1, like, I probably would have thought it was a little bit better, but, like, I had this expectation that it was going to be short, and then when it wasn't, like, I wasn't upset, but there was definitely this, like, because I had an expectation that it was short, I just kept waiting, like, I found myself being like, wait, there's more? Do you know what I mean? Which, like, wasn't a bad thing, but it was just that I had that expectation, you know what I mean? Where it's like, this is going to be short, so I'm prepared for that, and then it kept being longer, and I was like, it was a weird feeling, because I wasn't upset about it, but at the same time, like, I kept having to, like, say, oh, okay, I have to stop playing now, because, like, I kept thinking, like, it's going to be over any second, let me just finish this part, and then it would be another part, and I'd be like, I just have to put it down and come back to it, like I would, you never sit down to, like, Skyrim and think, I'm going to quick beat this, like, you don't think that, so you don't have that expectation at all, so when you start playing it, you know, okay, now's the time, I'm done playing, I'm putting it down, and then you pick it back up, you put it back, you know, like, that's how those kind of games work. But when you have this expectation that you're going to be able to beat it at the next moment and then move on to the next thing, it's like, oh, okay, there's more to it. You know, so it kept having to make me stop, but, you know, I can't really hold that against it in and of itself. It's just one of those things where coming off of Uncharted 1, especially when you're buying this Nathan Drake collection, the assumption is you play them through.
Right.
Like, maybe you've never played any of them, so you go, let's start at 1 and play right through. And so doing that, you'd be like, what's going on? There's more to this, you know? Like, it's so drastically longer than the first one that you're, like, surprised by it constantly.
Yeah.
So.
Alright, so heading over to Uncharted 3. Like I said, we're hitting the story real quick.
Yep.
So this one deals with a lot of backstory.
Right. And it starts and you're a kid, and it's like, oh.
So essentially
And this is the one where you really realize that Uncharted 1 story is total BS.
Right.
Because you find out that you and Sullivan have been friends, and he's been like your father figure since you were like 10 or 12 years old.
Essentially, you're a kid-ish. You try to steal.
You're clearly like maybe like an orphan, maybe.
Yeah.
You don't quite know.
You're just like... You're like a street kid. Like you go around stealing small things to like survive.
But you're also still interested in, you know, you are aware of this greater, like, you're aware of your not, like, that you are somehow related to Francis Drake, because I don't know who told you this or how you know this, because everybody says that Francis Drake never had any kids, and he, you know, the joke is in the comment that Nathan makes is like, well, not with his wife, and it's like, and it's like this whole thing that like Francis Drake had this separate life outside of like the home that he lived in, the home life he lived in England, like when he was doing all this exploring, and so like you're somehow like, you somehow know this, whether or not, like, maybe your mom told you before she passed away, like, or something. Like, it's very clear that you don't have parents at the time of the story, because you're very much, like, on your own, even though you're, like, 12.
Right.
And, you know, so it starts out with this kind of coming-of-age story where you, like, steal this thing, and immediately you find out that there's somebody else that wants it. Sullivan, you interact with him because he was also trying to steal it, but the people he was stealing it for are actually the bad guys for the whole story, and they're like immediately trying to attack you, and like, you know, they're shooting at you, and there's a whole, and even though you're 12, and you're running on the roofs of this like Spanish city or whatever, and you're like running away or whatever. And then afterwards, when all the dust settles, you basically meet back up with Sullivan, because basically it's the point being that, like, these people chase you forever, and then Sullivan is just like, he's just as smart as you, where like you like finally lose everybody, and you're like, I got him, and you come around the corner and Sullivan's standing there like, what are you doing, kid? You know,
yeah.
And it's like that kind of thing where it's just like, you think I don't know where you are, and it's like, oh shoot. And so, like, you know, that whole scene ends with like Sullivan being like, I think this is the start of a beautiful friendship type thing, where it's just like, you know, clearly they're gonna be together and like go on adventures and stuff. And so then it just like kind of fast forwards from that to like present day, and you and Sullivan are trying to fake out this, like, the same people that wanted the ring from you when you were a kid still want this ring, and you're trying to fake them out because you want the thing that they want the ring for, which is like this, the ring fits in this like disc, and it becomes a cipher, and Francis Drake wrote in all these codes, and you can break all the codes if you have the cipher. And so you want the disc, but the only way to get the disc is to like pretend you're trying to get rid of the ring, which flushes out these like secret society or something. I will say that like the story in this one is the most realistic of all of them. Like, it's like, other than the fact that it's like this fantastical hidden city
voyage and whatever,
and like whatever, obviously that stuff's fake, but like the supernaturally stuff is really not very supernatural at all, and it's really make me go, man, I wish they would have gone this route from the beginning, like where they make everything based in like some sort of reality.
Well, that's the general thing that I like about the stories for all these games, is where it's just like, hey, you know, Francis Drake 500 years ago, he was super smart, smarter than you are,
right?
And every time you think you figured out what's going on, he's a step ahead of you.
Exactly.
500 years ago,
right?
And that's like super cool to just be like,
absolutely,
dang it, you know, kind of thing.
For
and
sure.
It's like literally that, like, oh, we found the secret city, like, just as an example.
Yeah.
We found the secret city, but wait, that wasn't the thing at all. The secret city leads to this thing.
Exactly.
Like, oh my god, how did he know? Like, that's the best part of it. So, like the even with the first one, the fact that they had to include these zombies and stuff, it's like, dude, I was in when you were like, oh, we need to find this thing. It's like, cool, because like it has a little.
It could have not ended up being cursed, and it could have just been like that. The thing is just like so big that, you know, it'll be crazy if somebody takes it. Or
it has what the heck was I trying to say? Like, it has a little bit of history, but like kind of real history, but then kind of like a take on it, and that's cool.
Right.
So you don't have to be well, there's these Yeti monsters like in 2.
Yeah.
You could just be like,
well, like, so the first one, it's like there's a curse on an idol, and it turns people into zombies.
Right.
That's just totally like out of left field crazy.
Right.
The second one, it's like, okay, there's this resin liquid that when you consume it, it gives you like super strength, makes you live for a really long time, and the people that guard this resin have been drinking it for years, and so they're like these kind of powerfully, kind of big like dudes, and they pretend to be a Yeti so that to try to scare people away, like whatever, but they're really just this race of big dudes that live in this city that's hidden and guarded and is guarding this whatever, because there's this idea, there's this, like, they present this thing that, like, Genghis Khan, Peter the Great, all these, like, great conquerors from years, like, bygone ages, somehow got some sliver of that resin, like, and so it's kind of like, oh, that's how they became that great conqueror, like Vlad the Impaler, all these, like, crazy warlord over time, like, they just got a, like, smidgen of this resin and used it to to just, like, destroy the world, basically. And so, fast forward to modern time, if somebody with, like, modern abilities and warfare got a handle on this stuff, like, yeah, if you give that stuff to Genghis Khan, like, yeah, he's gonna, like, take over a part of the world, but there's not planes, there's not, like, immediately traveling everywhere, there's not, like, chemistry where we can break it down, figure out what it is, and make more of it. Like, none of that stuff exists, so, like, it's not as world-breaking as it could be. Like, whereas now, if this warlord gets it, it'll destroy the whole world. He'll just become this, like, ruler of everything. So it's like, oh, we got to stop this. But it's at least based in somewhat. This one, as we'll go, like, really, it's just this city that's in the desert that's hidden, and the whole thing is that there's the water became, like, there's a hallucinogenic agent that, like, this big, like, there's, like, this big vial that's, like, at the bottom of this, like, natural spring became, like, contaminated, and the people who lived in this, like, Atlantis level type, you know, advanced civilization, like, slowly killed themselves off because they, like, lost their minds with this hallucinogenic agent. And then it turns out this, like, Illuminati secret society is trying to get in there to get that hallucinogenic agent so that they could then, you know, craft some sort of, like, fear like, very much like, you know, what's his name from Batman, you know, Scarecrow. It's that idea where it's like, rule people through fear. We can take this, we can put it into, like certain, like, water supplies and then take over that area because everybody starts losing their minds. So it's like a control through fear kind of thing. And so it's, like, very much, like, fantastical, but, like, based in, like, okay, it's just hallucinogen. We have hallucinogens.
Right.
Like, that's a thing that actually exists. So to imagine one that's more powerful, it's not that hard. It's just like, oh, it exists. Okay, I'm on board. I get it. It's not like, oh, there's a thing that emits a curse and you turn into a zombie. That's totally crazy. So there's this whole secret society, and you spend the whole game, like, in the 3, like, trying to, like, basically outrace that secret society from getting their hands on some treasure. You don't know what the treasure is, and like you said, you're always like, is this the treasure? And it's like, no, it's something else. And it's like, you just think that they're after, like, gold or money or riches, and then at the very end you find out that it's this hallucinogen. And it's pretty cool how they present it, because, like, they have a couple moments where you are clearly this secret society has some hallucinogens, because they, like, shoot a couple of your friends with these darts. You get hit with a dart once, and you start seeing all this stuff, and you have to, like, play that section of the game, and all this crazy stuff's happening. You're seeing everything. You keep, like, going back into your past and whatever, and it's, like, this whole thing. And then at the end, you get to this village, this ancient city, and you drink some of the water, because it's in the desert, so when you see water, you're like, oh my gosh, we made it. And you start drinking the water, and then you look up, and, like, they do a pretty cool moment where, like, you're this Sullivan that you've been, like, friends with forever, and they really drive that home in this third one, like, gets shot, and then you look over and it's the bad guys, and they just shoot him, and he's, like, dead, and you're like, what just happened? And you're like, holy crap, because they didn't make it seem like you were hallucinating. There's no, like, weird whatever. But then all of a sudden you start, all the bad guys that you were facing start, like, turning into these, like, fire dudes, like they explode
That
into
part
fire,
is so hard.
and and they throw fire stuff at you, and you're like, oh my gosh, like you just kind of assume that it's like the same Uncharted thing where something supernatural thing happens, but then like as you go, you realize that you're hallucinating, and then you're like, oh my gosh, and then Sullivan's still alive. Nobody was turning into fire monsters. Like, you were just hallucinating, and then you find out that this, like, secret society is, like, trying to get this hallucinogen so they can, like, make it into themselves, like, their own thing. And so it ends up being, like, this cool, like, like, I feel like they finally got, and I don't know what 4's like, but I feel like in 3 they finally got the formula that works, where it's like just on the edge of hard to believe. Like, just don't take that one step too far. It's a tough line to draw, but they feel like they found it in 3, where they were like, this is the line.
That's what I like about it with the story first. It's in the third one, excuse me. It's believable, but crazy.
Crazy, right. I mean, clearly there's no secret societies.
Right.
Like running everything. Wink, 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 wink.
No,
I'm just winking my one eye on a pyramid. No. But, yeah, like, it clear, like, it's like, it's this kind of thing. Like, it's like, whatever. It's just that kind of, like, you're just like, oh, maybe this could be real. Like, so you just keep thinking that kind of thing. And, like, that's what makes 3, like, really, like, story-wise, just great. Of course, it wouldn't be the same if you don't meet back up with Alina at some point.
Yep.
It's definitely, like, you and Sullivan going around a lot more in this one, buddy. But there's definitely all these, like, moments where they're, like, making it clear that Sullivan is getting older. You know, like, he makes jokes about it, but then there's some moments where it's like, I gotta catch my breath, kid. You know, and it's like, he's just, like, taking a break, and it's just like, come on, Sully, we can do this. And it's like, we've gone through so many scrapes like this. And it's like, kid, that was a long time ago. You know, like, and it's like, definitely you can tell, like, he's like, I'm done. Like, I'm done adventuring. Like, and so, like, I'm curious how that goes in 4. But, you know, they're presenting it where it's like, you know, like, this guy that you've been running around with, who's been, like, your father figure for your whole life, like, clearly is, like, getting older, and, like, the reality of that is always a, you know, thing to, like, to touch, you know, like, it's an interesting story point for a character like Nathan Drake, who, like, is just like, let's go to the next adventure, and now you're, like, this best friend, father figure for your life is like, maybe I want to take it easy, you know, and it's like, what does that mean for him, you know, whatever. But, you know, you meet back up with Alina, and, like, clearly things didn't work out again, even after the second one, so, like, you have a tough time, but, you know, again, you're thrown back together, and you realize that you make a good team, and, you know, so it's definitely, like one of those, you know, it ends on a note where it's like, you know, maybe we'll try to make this work again. Yeah. And so we'll see what happens in 4, but, you know, really, I think they really, you know, figured out what they're doing, and 3, storyline-wise, at least from a believable standpoint, it's not I don't think it's as exciting as the second one, the way the second one's told, with, like, the different time periods. They play with that a little bit in this one, but it's pretty linear once they get past it. Whereas the first one, like, they're really jumping around.
So if I'm talking about a grade for 3's story, I like it better than 2. I like Sully stuff more. I like the history stuff more. So I gave an 8 to 2. I'm going to give an 8.5 to the third one.
Yeah, I would give an 8 to 3, because I liked 2's better. I liked I liked 3's a lot with how believable it was, but I liked what 2 did with the time, like the jumping back and forth between timelines.
Yeah.
This one just had, like, showing you as a kid and then present day. And then once it get back to present day, it was just a linear ride to the end of the story.
Yeah.
And so, like, it was good, but, like, I really liked, like, where it was, like, you're watching how these two things connect. In the second one, I thought that was really cool, like, starting, like, bleeding on a train, and then you're in a tropical island planning a heist on a museum, and it's like, how do we get to that other part? Like, I really don't know. And so, like, that I liked a lot. So I'm going to give it a little bit lower on 3, but...
So we're going to segue over to the gameplay, which we're going to find some differences in the games.
Yeah.
So let's make this as painless as possible. 1's gameplay...
Right, it's basically 1 and then 2 and 3.
Yeah, pretty much.
There's a little... There's basically, like, 1 has stuff, 2 it's pretty perfect, 3 is pretty much 2, but they started to do some stuff that make it kind of crappy. 2 is basically the best, in my opinion.
I'm going to disagree, but let's start with the first one.
Okay.
First one is literally...
Ugh.
It's really bad in that it is literally... do a little tiny bit of exploring
which is fun.
Which is fun.
The exploring part in 1 is great. It's
you climb
exactly what you want.
You climb on stuff,
right.
You jump on stuff, you
it's
figure
like
out
Prince of Persia,
you
fun.
You
like,
enter a big room, how do we get from here to there, right? Sully says something silly, you say something silly. It's good, right?
Excellent.
And then you have a gunfight, and it's bad. It's so bad.
Just
it's cover fire, Gears of War, just so
But the
bad.
worst. It's like, I don't know that I haven't played a ton of like shooters from like the era or before.
Right.
I haven't played them all to know that there's not ones that are way worse.
Well,
but as far as a AAA title, because I played most AAA titles over the years, and like it's just the worst.
It's really bad, and there's very little variance. It's literally the whole game is like, do this, get in a gunfight.
Once you figure out how to get through a gunfight, you're on autopilot for the rest of the game.
Even when they throw something different, like there's a part where you're on a like jet ski kind of going around, it still has the gunfight stuff.
Yep.
So it's jet ski and gunfight, and gunfight.
Yep.
We're not going to take too much time on this. It's really bad. It's
very,
really
very
boring.
bad. It's very boring. The exploring, excellent. The combat is like... It's so bad that like every time there was... Like, it's a good thing that 1 was as short as it was. Because if 1 was as long as 2 with that combat... I wouldn't have finished it. It was that bad. I would not have finished it.
Every time you get to a part that has the gunfire, you're just like groaning. It's so bad.
Right.
So hey, I'm giving it a 3. Like it was really bad.
Yeah, I would give the first one, like, gameplay wise, I would give it like a 2. No, I'd give it a 3 too, because like this exploring is fun, and I remember
that's the only thing that saves it.
The thing that's crazy about this, like I was telling you this too, when I played the first one, when it came out and I bought it for full price and played it on the PS3, it was like one of the first games I owned for the PS3 was Uncharted. I think I had on like the Call of Duty, whatever the Modern Warfare, that first Modern Warfare, and I forget what the third game I had was, but like that, like I remember loving the first Uncharted. Like I feel like I remember not caring for the combat, but I remember like liking it a lot, and playing it this time, it was like it was a struggle to get through that first game, and it's super short. And it was still such a struggle. Like, and like, I guess this would have been more in story, but it's kind of in gameplay because of the combat. But because of the premise that the combat sucks, right? You really don't want the combat. So anytime the story would say that you were when you were opening up a chamber that you had never been in before, and you're the one that solved the thing to unlock it, you're like, good. I don't have to worry about combat for a while. You would get into an area, and then there's guys already there. And it's like, that doesn't even make sense.
Yeah, at least in the other ones, there's like, in 3, they have the premise that these people are smarter than you, so of course they're going to be past
you're chasing them.
Yeah.
So they're always one step ahead of you.
And in 2, it's like an open area environment where like they could get there.
Right.
But then also there's like the people who have always been there. Like
and you're fighting them a lot.
People.
Yeah, the Yeti.
But that is true.
Whatever.
Like you're like, oh, I opened this, like, and there's like no other way into it. It's like it's like going into a cavern that you're like, this is the first time
and you do this
been
crazy
there, and then someone's there.
Yeah, you do this crazy, like, fun unlocking thing, and then you walk in and there's like lights set up, and you're like, are you kidding me? And then there's like, hey, who's over there? And you're like, oh my gosh, this is so dumb.
Alright, so over to 2's gameplay. It is better in just about every way. I mean,
I liked it way better than 1. I will still say that the style of combat in Uncharted, it's just not great. Like, it's okay. 2 does it at least better, where they introduced the stealth thing, which does help a lot. But I will say the thing that bothered me the most, this was just lazy, like, level design or whatever. The thing that made me, like, super angry was the fact that they don't design each area to be either run-in guns blazing or stealth. They try to present it like you could do stealth, but most areas have a point at which, and I will say, I tried. There was this one area that I thought, this has got to be a way that you could do this through stealth. Because the thing that happens is, once you are discovered, it brings extra waves of enemies out that spawn simply because you were seen, which is normal for stealth games. That's totally normal. But normally there is a way to figure out a route in which you can do it. And there was one area where I worked on it for like literally an hour, just replaying the section, restarting at a checkpoint, because I was like sure that I could figure it out. And I got like 3 of like the 6 guys I needed to killed. And I was just like, I don't know how to get this next guy without being seen. And I like looked it up online, and everybody was saying the same thing. It was basically like, yeah, you reach a point, there's just no way to do it. And I was just like super let down, because I was like, it was really fun to try to figure it out. And the fact that I got to a point where I realized I couldn't was really disappointing. That I was like, oh, I thought that I could figure it out. Like, do you know what I mean? They made it seem like you could. And like, there was a couple of mechanics like Metal Gear Solid style where you could make a noise and they would come investigate. And I was like, this is going to be fun. And then it was like, oh, he just immediately sees you no matter what you do. And then it's like, okay, never mind. And like, that made me really annoyed, because like, I was like, the replay, I mean, we'll talk about it, replayability could have been amazing, because I would have played through the game if it was like, you can play it without ever being seen. If there was like a trophy for it, I might have tried to get it, because it was, the stealth part was fun. I did enjoy it. But once I realized that it was just like, the stealth part was in there like for you to kill maybe the first couple enemies in an area, but inevitably you have to be seen and fight the full waves of enemies, that was like a huge letdown for me.
Well, I mean, besides that, it is much more, it's much more polished. And even the platforming is like there are times where you're like, how do I, and that's cool, like when they set up, how do I get there? Even though like you're just like climbing up some scaffolding, but you're like, wait a second. Yeah. And that's cool. That's the kind of stuff that you like there's never a part where you're like super excited to get into a gunfight in any Uncharted. Right. But like, whatever. But like,
and the exploring in 2 is super, super fun. I will say that this is inevitable for any games like this. Eventually you'll come to an area where you don't think you can make a jump because of the way the game was designed. It just doesn't look like that's the right way to go. Because you look over and you go, well, that's obviously not the way, because that jump's way too big. And you scour an area trying to find where to go, and then you realize that you could make the jump, and the perspective is just kind of off, and it's like, that part happens a couple of times, but I feel like that happens in Prince of Persia. And Prince of Persia is amazing, and I love Prince of Persia, and it happens there too, where it's hard to design a game where every time everything is, I can make that jump. Like once in a while, it didn't happen very much in 2, but when it did happen, it was super annoying, because it was like you end up walking around an area for like a couple minutes, going like, where am I supposed to go? Where am I supposed to go? And then you like finally make. Sometimes the hint comes up and it doesn't, and it doesn't help, because you're just like, I know I need to get over there, and then finally you try to make the jump and it's like, oh, you make it immediately, and you're like, ugh.
Yeah. So like I said, overall, I pretty much enjoyed it. 7.5.
Yeah, I think that that I would give it. Let's see. I really liked I loved the train stuff. and I loved the intro train thing and the other exploring, and I even really loved the puzzles. But because of that stealth thing, I think I'm gonna give it like a 7 because of that stealth thing. Really, like they presented it and it worked and it was good. It was well designed. But then once I realized that they were like not letting you always use it, that was a little bit of a letdown. So I was like, dang it.
So 3 is very similar to 2.
Yeah.
Honestly, like besides the settings, 2 and 3 are very, very similar games, which isn't necessarily a bad thing.
No, definitely.
They really reinvented themselves for 2, but they were like, 2 works, so let's just take 3 and put it in a different setting.
I feel like they reinvented themselves in 2 and then just tried to polish it for 3. Storyline wise, gameplay wise, the only thing I didn't like about 3 is that they really was a lot more quick time events that like were crowbarred into things that I was like, especially with the combat, and that was annoying. Like there's a type of enemy you encounter in 3 that is big. They like are usually just like 7-foot tall dudes, and they come running in, and you always have to fight them hand to hand because they like get too close to you too quickly. They usually can't gun them down, and you have to like take the time to like fight them. And the only way to fight them is to like wait, hit triangle, dodge out of the way, kick them in the butt. Then you punch them a couple times. Then they grab you. You have to smash on circle, and you break free. And it was like the game starts with some quick time events, and I was like, okay, that's fine. Like I don't mind quick time events. Like I like them sometimes if they're used right. But as the game went, I felt like there was just too many of them. Like where it was like, I get it. I don't need. They just kept crowbarring it in at places, and that was a little bit annoying to me.
See, I've never been annoyed with QuickTime events.
I'll say I'm not annoyed. Like when it's done right and when it's done well. Like every God of War game, I love all the QuickTime events. Like I don't dislike a single God of War QuickTime event. They're all excellent, and I love like interacting with the story in that way. But like the way they did the QuickTime events, it's not that it was part of the cinematic. It was just that within a fight, a big enemy would come in, and the only way to beat him is to wait for this triangle to appear on screen, hit it,
I can see your
you
point
dodge
there.
out of the way. It's not like you don't come up with a clever way to defeat the guy. It's the same dumb thing each time it happens. And in my mind, it happened too much for my liking, where it was like, in the beginning, I was like, okay, cool. And then, like, you encounter a big guy, like, maybe once every major fight. And it's like, okay, it's one of those again.
Yeah.
And so that was, like, a little bit annoying. I'll just say that.
I will say in terms of 3, I feel that they bumped up the stealth.
Yes, absolutely.
And some of it is by...
You actually
by necessity?
You actually could get through areas just doing stealth, and that was amazing.
Is 3 the one where you have to go through like a museum or whatever, and like you literally cannot be
No,
seen?
that's the second one.
That's the second one.
Right.
Okay.
That's when you're trying to find the dagger or whatever.
Got it. But still, 3,
yeah.
like, there's times where, like, you're the kid and you can't be seen.
And that's the reason why, too, I thought stealth was going to be so important. Because there's a whole mission on stealth where as soon as you're seen, the game's over, that I was like, oh, cool, stealth's going to be important. And it didn't end up being. But then in the third one, it is, you could get through whole areas without being seen. And you should try, because you fight way less guys. Like, sometimes there's like 4 guys. But if you're seen, there's like 10 guys.
Right.
Because they come running out of all these extra ways. But if you get through it without being seen, you only had to kill 4 guys. It might take a little longer, but I don't know. Stealth to me is always much more fun than just run and gun combat. Especially like since the combat's not very innovative. And the guns in Uncharted, all 3, are kind of boring. Like, there's nothing that you're like, this is fun special to shoot.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like, Borderlands, Ratchet and Clank. There's games where guns are, like, super fun. This is not one of them. Guns are just pretty average. Once you find a gun you like, you just look around for it, and, like, that's it. You never, like, actually find a gun that you're like, ooh, I'm gonna try. You're never excited. You just pick up whatever and use it. It's fine. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. So because the stealth is better, and just because in general I like kind of where it's happening. I know it's not quite gameplay kind of thing, but I I mean, we're gonna find this out probably at the end with all the overall scores, but I like 3 better than 2.
Right.
The general consensus in the world is that 2 is a near perfect game and 3 isn't as good.
Right.
That's the general consensus. But my feeling general as playing them is I like 3 better.
Right.
I just did.
Yeah.
So we're looking at an 8 overall for me for gameplay. Again, not perfect.
Right.
The shooting stuff is still shooting stuff.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
pretty good.
What did I give 2?
7.
Right. So I'm going to give this one a 6.5, just a little bit less because of the QuickTime events. It would be perfect. It would be perfect. It'd be the same score, 7, if it didn't have the QuickTime events. I did like that the stealth was better, but there were still some areas that it's like you can't stealth this. Like the area starts with you being seen, so stealth's just not on the table.
Well, at least that's a story driven.
No,
reason.
for sure.
I was actually
appreciate
thinking about that when we were
but-
talking. So it's like it's lame if you're like you go in and it's just like, oh, he's seen because you reached this spot in the game.
Yeah, exactly.
But at least if it's like, that's him, get him. Like,
right.
At least that's cool.
Exactly.
Like, I think that's pretty
I
neat.
agree.
All right, so heading over to graphics, we're
talking about the Uncharted Nathan Drake
We're
collection.
talking about the PS4 one,
right?
Which is updated.
Yeah.
They're all pretty good.
Yeah,
honestly.
absolutely. Even the first one looks
really
pretty great.
The thing that all of these games does so well, 2 things, is the character models / mouths working. I don't know. I don't know.
No, the cinematics. The facial expressions look good.
One of my big pet peeves in games. I am not about graphics, as anyone who's ever listened to this knows. I don't care. But if you're gonna have voice acting, I literally do not care if you have the character's mouth literally not move at all.
I'm looking at you, RE7.
Right? Like you can have the characters.
Like, RE7 looks beautiful, and those character mouths are the worst.
But like literally, if they took RE7 and had the character's mouths not move at all, like that would be acceptable, right? But the thing that you can't do is have them like not match up. Like
at
just
all.
do it all. Do it all good, or don't do it at all. Like
exactly.
Like I literally played Final Fantasy X-2 for the PS2 for like 5 minutes because it was literally like, "Hey, Titus," like literally that bad, like that bad. Yep. And the thing that this game does so good is it's even for Uncharted 1, which came out in 2009, it's
absolutely.
Like perfect.
Yep.
It's like they mo-capped like everything,
yes.
which I assume they did.
Right.
And the guy who plays Nathan Drake, I forget the dude's name, he's like the most famous voice actor dude, is like great.
Yep, absolutely.
And like it just
I mean, like we said in the game, in the story, it's all really well written so that they get good people to deliver it, and it's excellent.
Uncharted 1 specifically, because atmosphere is included with graphics, it is a very bland setting. It's a very bland, like Mayan or Inca or whatever it was, like.
But I think it looks cool in and of itself. Like the ruins are pretty cool. They do get repetitive. I agree,
dude. I mean, I'm telling you right now, I'm thinking in my head right now, and at this point of recording, it's actually been a while since I played any of these.
Right.
I can think of a lot of really specific moments in 2 or 3, and literally, like, truth be told, guys, like. We're talking, I played the games twice, so I can, like, obviously give opinions on them.
Yeah.
It's been a long time since I played these at this point.
Right.
And I can remember a lot of specific scenes in 2 and 3, right?
Right.
The only scene that I can specifically remember in my head is the jet ski scene and the scene at the end where you're on the stupid ship fighting the stupid final boss. That's all I can remember of the game. And the very beginning, but that's the very beginning.
Right.
But like everything else blends in, it's all... Ugh.
Yeah. I think that the ruins are pretty... I think that the World War II abandoned U-boat areas are kind of cool looking.
Okay, I remember that too,
but you're right. It's repetitive and it's a little bit bland. I agree, absolutely. Especially if you're comparing it to 2 and 3. Like 2 and 3 blow it out of the water.
But again, considering that we're talking that this is a PS3 game that's literally just got an HD pretty up, I'm still pretty high on it.
It's still very
I'm
nice.
Probably looking at a 6.5 here. Which is again good. It's above
I would give a 7 to Uncharted 1, and then it's just going to go up from there because they all look great.
So Uncharted 2, graphics, atmosphere, you have even better mocap, even better how they're looking,
and it's just cool.
Every character looks cool, and like the other thing that they did was they made unique looking people that
Oh yeah.
don't like a lot of characters have like where they're supposed to be like attractive, charming people and they look weird. Like Chloe is like Indian descent or whatever, but she's like very like unique, but also not like
sure.
not like ugh, you know, kind of thing. Like what is this character model? Like very pretty,
like
very set up.
You can be like, oh, I see why Nathan is attracted to this person. Like they seem attractive.
And Alina's playing Jane,
character.
But she also like
she has an attitude and
it's like and like
absolutely.
she like very it's very well done and the I love the Tibetan mountainside and whatever. That stuff's super cool,
super
right?
pretty.
Like
absolutely.
they really did. I mean, it's a Sony game, so if it doesn't have graphics, what does it have?
Right, exactly.
Right? So I'm really high on this. I'm probably looking at like an 8.5. Like it's just they did a really good job.
Yeah, I would say that I'm right there. I'm at an 8 on 2 for sure.
Now let me tell you why I'm going to give Uncharted 3 a higher score because. Sand effects. I mean, not just that, but like literally,
sure.
like
That's
the like I love like the sand setting and just the way that they build, especially. And again, we're talking. It's probably been like 2 years since I played this game at this point.
Right.
Like I specifically remember how they set up. Like I think you call it the bazaar. The like at the beginning of the game, like the For those who don't know, it's like a marketplace.
Right.
I should probably say marketplace.
Well, but you also go there. You also go to like a bazaar type area with when you're older. With when you meet up with Alina, you're in like this Middle Eastern like bazaar. Like,
and a lot of things are going on.
Yeah,
like,
and there's
it's like
all sorts of stuff happening around
tons
you.
of attention to detail. Like all these NPCs are like doing specific things, and it's just cool. It's like a well-directed scene where all the extras are doing what they need to do.
Absolutely.
And it's just... It's really good.
Excuse me. The hallucinogen start is good.
Oh yeah, that's
the hallucinogenic parts
very
are really, really good. Like they come across where you're like you know, you're like, oh, this is totally freaking me out. And when you start losing it in the desert, that part's cool too. Like you start seeing like mirages and stuff, and the way they do it's really, really cool.
And just like I can like, especially in 3, I can specifically remember what the bad girl Marlo looks like. Like she has that like that blonde kind of heiress kind of thing, like fancy.
Yeah.
And I remember what the little weasel guy
looks
like. Right. Like he's like very
He
specific.
does look like a weaselly rat.
They really hit it out of the park with that. So
Definitely.
I'm looking at a 9. I thought it was great.
Yeah, I would give 3 an 8.5 on looks. I mean, I think it's only got a slight edge because of some of the things, but they're pretty. I think 2 and 3 are.
And spoilers when we talk about 4. If you don't give it a 10, I don't know what's going to get a 10. I'm telling you right now, it's like
I'm excited
gorgeous.
Because like
you might
I would have given. I don't remember what we gave RE7, but like RE7 was like probably one of the best looking games I've seen in a while, except when it came to the character like the models talking and doing stuff. Like I think what was the Jack? Is that his name? Like he looked okay.
Yeah.
But like that girl that you're chasing the entire time is the worst. I hated it.
But yeah,
like,
no,
it's so bad.
Uncharted 4 is just like...
But like this is like Uncharted 1 looked better than RE7.
Right.
So I'm excited to play 4 because it's going to be
so
different.
I feel like there's really not much difference between sound for the 3 games.
No,
like
they're all...
I really don't know
the music
why...
is great.
I wouldn't just give the
great.
same...
Me
like
too.
score through
Absolutely.
it. So, is there anything to dock it? It's got really good voice acting. The music isn't anything memorable, but should it be?
No,
right?
it's pretty what you would expect. It's not memorable, so you can't give it a high. You can't give it a 10 because it's not like you're humming the songs.
Yeah,
you forget them. So clearly, it's not amazing, but. It's not so bad that you're like, oh, what are they playing?
Well, the voice acting of everyone, even the more minor characters, is just great.
Absolutely.
I mean, like, I can't ever forget Sully's voice, right?
Yeah.
Like, wow,
exactly.
kid.
Yeah,
exactly.
It's
like not like
it's not a caricature. It feels real.
It's not.
But it's well done.
Reinventing the wheel. Like you could see this dude being a dude that's just like,
yep.
I've seen some crap, kid, and I'm done.
Yeah,
kind of thing. It's just like, So you know what? I'm gonna give it an 8. 8 the whole way through. And the only reason
Yeah.
it's not like a 9 or a 10 is the music isn't like so exceptional. I'm
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
blowing it out or whatever. But like
Right.
8.5. I'm gonna give it an 8.5 because the voice acting is so phenomenal.
Yeah.
For everybody, bad guys, whatever.
Right. Yeah. I'm definitely gonna give it like a 7.5 because as much as I do like the voice acting, the only thing I will say is that like with a game like this that's supposed to be so epic and amazing, I mean, obviously they can't get it, but I was waiting for like the John Williams-esque Indiana Jones music where you like maybe have like a single theme that
they
like,
don't have a theme. That's
right,
a good point.
Where
they
you like
really don't.
remember it and it's like the Indiana Jones theme is like you hear it and you're like, yes, I'm in.
I think they use the same sound in 2 and 3, maybe even the first one. I really like the sound effect of when you pick something up. It's like ding. Like, I really
when
like
you
it.
pick up like a treasure.
Yeah, I really
sure.
like it.
Yeah.
All right, so let's hit the brakes and talk about the fun factor for Uncharted 1. It's not.
No.
It's not. It's just not fun.
No.
Like
it's
I'm
pretty
like
bad.
cringing thinking about it.
I mean, like I will say, like I said again, when I played it at the time, I really loved it.
Yeah,
my
but
only assumption
we're
is
talking now.
no, I know. My only assumption is that like when it as an exploring game, like that part of it was pretty cool and innovative, I guess, in a way. It's not that innovative because Prince of Persia existed, Tomb Raider existed. It's not really like it was doing something no one ever did before.
Yeah.
It just did a good job of it, I guess. But yeah, like it. Yeah, it's just rough. It's just not fun. It's just I didn't have fun playing it at all. Like I was just like, ugh.
So I didn't like stop playing it the second time around, but
Right.
I didn't have any fun. In fact, the only reason I continued, and this is like, I guess you can argue if this is good or bad for the rating. The only reason I played it is because I was like, I want to play 2 and 3 again, right?
Right.
So like that, I could have. I'm not giving it a 0 because I finished it.
Right.
I'm not
You
giving.
didn't stop.
I'm not giving it a 1 because I didn't just go to YouTube and watch the video.
Right.
So I'm giving it a 2.
Yeah. Yeah, I can give it a 2 for sure. Fun factor wise.
Let's finish off Uncharted 1 with the replayability. Let me say again that I played this game twice.
Right. And I did too.
And I don't want to ever play it again, so I'm looking at a 2. I don't ever want to play it again. Like
that's the thing. Like I played it twice,
and especially now
I wish
that
I would have played the other ones twice.
If I would have if I'm gonna replay the series, which I might eventually, now I have 4 games to go through. So F that, I'm never playing the first one again.
Right.
I'll just like read a plot synopsis and be like, oh yeah. There's always YouTube videos that are like all the cutscenes, right? Yep. And like now that I have, when I only had 3 to do, it's like, well, the first one's short, but now like 4 is like so long, right? Like, as you'll find out. So like it's like, no way am I adding this one to it. Like, get out of here. So looking at a 2 for me.
Yeah, I agree. A replayability, I put a 1 on 1 because the only reason I'm replaying this is for this review.
Otherwise,
I wouldn't have done it. Like I might not like. Yeah, it's weird because, like I said, I did play it and that's kind of why I went to replay it this time. Was like, all right, well, I liked 1, so this should be fun. And then was like, I hate everything. I wish I didn't play video games.
So, fun factor on 2, it's fun. It's got, as we went over again, it's got its moments. But it varies it a lot more. I mean, fighting the Yeti guys, cool. Scaling the mountains, cool.
The train, like the first
train part,
but then
cool.
the later train where it's like moving and you're making your way up it. That part's pretty exciting too.
Yep.
There's a lot of epic, exciting moments in Uncharted 2 for sure.
And again, it's hard to, when you have 2 games that are so similar in 2 and 3, it's hard not to compare them. Right. And the only reason this one doesn't get a little bit higher is because I had more fun playing 3. It's very tough when you have 2 games that are similar to just be like, I'm looking at this in a vacuum.
Right.
Well, I'm sorry I can't because they're just like that similar in terms of gameplay kind of thing. So I'm looking at a 7.5. We're still talking very good.
I would give 2 an 8. I'm gonna give 3 less because like again the fun factor of the of some of the combat in 3 was it just made me annoyed. But yeah, like I liked 2 a lot. I thought it was very fun, and I really liked the way the story was told. I thought that was fun. That was fun to me. But
so replayability.
I would play
again.
2 again.
Yeah, totally. Absolutely.
So, I would give it like a 7 for replayability.
I was thinking the same thing. Again, we always say that 10 is, well, as
10 is like I'd pick it up any
no,
time.
but no. I look at 10 as, if I ask you, would you replay it again? You would say, well, I already did. Before we talked, I played it again, right? Or I'm playing it again, right? And like a 9 is like I do it anytime. So I would have to be in the mood, like,
I guess the other thing to think about is like replayability is like I don't necessarily want to get all the trophies, right? Or something.
Okay.
I don't want to go back and collect all those dumb treasures.
No.
Right?
I mean, I would never want to do that.
But there's some games where I would want that. Do you know what I mean? Like Batman, I wanted to collect everything. This game, I had no interest in collecting everything. So as far as replayability, I guess it takes a ding on that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I would give it, what are you giving it for replayability?
7.
Yeah, so I would give it a 6.5 for replayability.
For Uncharted 2.
For Uncharted 2.
Okay. Now, going over to fun factor of Uncharted 3. Again, fun. As far as fun is concerned, I had a little more fun in 3, so I'm just going to compare it to 2. I gave 2 a 7.5. I'm giving it an 8. I had a little bit more fun, personally.
Yeah, I'm doing the opposite. I'm going down on 3. So what did I give 2? 8?
8, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm going down to 7 for fun factor on...
And pretty much the same thing for replayability. I'm a little more inclined to play 3 than 2. I gave 2 a 7, so I'm going to give this a 7.5.
Yeah. What did I give 2? 6.5?
6.5, yeah.
Yeah, I'd give 3 a 5. I would definitely play it again with someone, but I have no interest in actually playing 3 again on my own. But I would play it if somebody was like, I wanted to see those Uncharted games. I'd be like, well, we'll skip 1. We'll definitely play 2, and if you still want to, we'll play 3.
So, just tabulating up the scores real quick. It's going to surprise you that Uncharted 1 got the
lowest.
Worst, right? Isn't that nuts? So, overall, Uncharted 1, I gave it a 4.5. Parker gave it a 4.25. Which, again, I love this rating system. It always works out, right? Like, no matter what, it's like, is Uncharted 1 a below-average game by a bit? Yeah, right? It's like, it's just a great rating system. Thank you, me. Uncharted 2, I gave a 7.8, and Parker gave a 7.6. So somehow I liked it a little more than him, even though he liked it more than I did.
It's weird.
You got dinged on the replayability where you were just
I think overall, as much as I liked 2 more than you did in certain categories, I still really don't feel like I'm going to necessarily replay them. Like, I would, but I'm not, like, itching to.
And then Uncharted 3, I gave it an 8.25, which sounds about correct because I very much enjoyed it. And Parker gave it a 7.08. Which makes sense because he enjoyed it but had some problems with it.
Yep.
So I have 2 parting questions. The first is, you, in general, if you had to pick just one, Uncharted 2 so far,
Absolutely.
right? Yeah. And the main reason is, like, the kind of, like, the fact that it goes back and forth between...
I really liked the way the story was told, timeline-wise, and I really thought that the epic adventure things in 2, I liked better... I liked the 3 ones, but I liked 2's better, I think. Like, just the train thing was great. The moving train was great. Like, I loved all that. 3, the epic parts are, like, riding your horse and you're going up along those trucks. That part, I didn't, like, it wasn't like, this is amazing. It was just, like, fine. So, yeah, I think that, for me, 2 was good.
And Uncharted 2 is still considered on many websites to be one of the greatest games of all time.
Like, isn't it always on the Game Facts list for when they do that tournament?
It's one of the highest rated IGN games of all time still. I think it's like a 9.6, which is like absurd, right?
Right.
Would you agree with that?
I mean, playing it now, like, maybe if I played it the day it came out, I feel like I probably would have given it that score. But again, these are people that are reviewing it now. I don't know. I think that it gets a little bit of a ding, like, because even though 2, it's really well done compared to 1, it's still, that combat is, like, not that fun. Like,
yeah, I mean,
it's fine. It's fine. It definitely doesn't, it's not, like, eye-gougingly bad as the first one, but it's still not, like, I played Division, and that's, like, fun run-and-gun cover combat. Like, I've played Gears of War, that one's fun, too. Like, this is, like, it's just not very fun combat.
I mean, despite loving the series, and despite loving almost all the Sony, like, first-party exclusives, I was always, like, confused as to why, like, Uncharted 2 was, like... Because, like, there are games, like... I find that as an overall experience, Last of Us is a better game. Now, it's newer by a couple years.
Right.
But, like people like Last of Us quite a bit.
Right.
But it's never, like, top 5 games of all time list.
Yeah,
whereas
that's
Uncharted 2 is, like, many times, like, that far up there. And I found that interesting. And,
yeah,
like,
that is crazy.
Maybe it's because it was, like, really the first kind of its series that was so big and grand.
Yeah,
And then,
maybe.
like, since 3 came out and was, like, didn't reinvent the wheel, but, like, in my opinion, kind of fine-tuned it a little bit, people were like, well, I already did this in Uncharted 2, right?
Yeah.
I'm not exactly sure on that.
I kind of feel like 2, or Uncharted as this whole series, but 2 especially, if they, like, cut out combat altogether and figured out a way to present the story without combat, it would be immensely better in my book. Because, like, the thing is, like, if I want to play, like, a tactical cover shooter / stealth game, I'll play Metal Gear. Like, that's the best when it comes to that. Like, I'm never gonna not play the best of something, right? And I don't need that in this game. The epic, like, fun, crazy adventure stuff that happens in 2 and in 3, I love it. I'm on board with all of it. It's so cool. The grandeur of it, seeing it all, like, especially in the HD collection, it's beautiful. It's amazing. You're jumping these big jumps. It's so satisfying to do these platforming sections. I loved every bit of that. As soon as I hit combat, it's just like, like, I'm just let down. So it's weird to me that 2 is, like, that high. Because,
it's still,
like,
it's still
crazy.
It's still, like, Metacritic, all that stuff. It's, like, definitely considered one of the best, like, games, like, honestly, of all time. Right. If you're just going to go by straight
yet it
up
has
ratings.
this, yet it has an entire, I don't know, I guess maybe it's not half, but it's over 25% of the game is this combat that I think is just not that great.
And honestly, I mean, we're going to be talking to Uncharted 4 next time. You could definitely make an argument that Uncharted 4 just blows it away, depending on how you take it and everything, and depending on how it is when I look at it. But, like, my initial thing was, like, forget 2. So it is still. I mean, well, then again, when I played 3, my initial thing was forget 2.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, so hey, Thank you guys for listening. Next time we're gonna talk about Uncharted 4. It's a video game made by Sony for the PS4, and on the PS Pro, it's gonna blow things away. Thanks again for listening, guys. See you next time.